Right, so this is our first class for the Cambridge O-Level English Language 1123 syllabus, and we will be going over some very basic information today and possibly tomorrow as well. So just to get familiarized with what the syllabus requires us to know and what it requires us to do. Right, you may already be familiar with that, but still, right, I need to go over that. So this is the syllabus document that you can see on screen. Right, we're skipping the pages with all the introductory mumbo jumbo, and here we have, right, the content overview. So, by the way, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. Okay, since your mics aren't working, so put them in the chat and I'll address them. So you've got two papers for the 1123 syllabus. Paper 1 is the reading paper, paper 2 is the writing paper. Each of these are worth 50 marks and they each have a time duration of 2 hours. Because they have even time duration, uh, in even weightage, sorry, they have an even weightage for your total grade. Right, so we'll go into what paper 1 and paper 2 actually have in store for us. But before that, right, what are the assessment objectives? So as for reading, right, there are five assessment objectives, writing as well. We can see here R1 is reading objective 1, right, and that is to demonstrate an understanding of explicit meanings. Explicit meanings basically means something is given to you very clearly in the text, right? So you don't have to go around trying to think, oh, what is it that they might mean to say? It is given to you very directly. You just need to find the answer. That's all you need to do. R2 is demonstrate understanding of implicit meaning and attitude. Now, the implicit part is where something might be hinted towards in the text. They might give you certain clues, but it's not given to you directly. So you will have to think about it. You will have to do some processing and come up with the answer. The third is to analyze, evaluate, and develop facts, ideas, and opinions using appropriate support from the text. Now, this is something that will be most relevant in your paper 2 with directed writing, but that means you need to read what the text is saying and then do some processing, go beyond the points given in the text, stay relevant, but go beyond, and again, we'll talk about that in detail when we come to paper 2. R4 is demonstrate understanding of how writers achieve effects and influence readers. This is relevant to question 2 of the comprehension. And they'll be asking you about why the writer used a particular word or why the writer said what he or she did in the text, the phrasing, the vocabulary, or what the text makes you feel or think about, possibly, right? And then finally, select and use information for specific purposes. This is throughout, right? Finding the correct answer for the comprehension, finding the correct content points for the summary, and the correct relevant points for directed writing. As for the writing objectives, W1 is articulate experience and express what is thought, felt, and imagined. Right? So basically, you're able to express yourself properly and clearly uh, in written words. Organize and structure ideas. So W2, organize and structure ideas and opinions for deliberate effect. So you write in a way that gets your message across. And for deliberate effect means, right, more so in paper 2 when you have a directed writing task. So you're writing an informal letter or a formal report or an article or speech, or if it's a narrative, then your style should be a narrative style of writing, right? W3 is use a range of vocabulary and sentence structures appropriate to context, right? So a range of vocabulary, don't keep repeating the same word over and over again, right? Don't have the same simple sentence structures or just compound sentences or simple sentences over and over, right? Appropriate to context. So what it is that you're writing, right? That makes a difference. Use register appropriate to context. So again, right, formal language, informal language, your style, The style of a letter will be different from a style of a speech or an article. Again, we'll get into details. And W5 is very important. Make accurate use of spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Right? So accurate use. It's not just about spelling being correct, right? Is the word that you're trying to use, does it even fit in the context of what you're trying to say? Right? You can use a very good word, but it doesn't fit, and so it will make no sense. Punctuation is important. Grammar, obviously, right? So grammar includes sentence structure, subject verb agreement, right? All that stuff. As you can see, paper one is the reading paper, but it has 20% weightage for writing as well, and paper two is the writing paper, and it has a 20% weightage for reading as well. Now, moving on, right? This is pretty much what we already discussed in slightly different words. Details of the paper, right? So, paper one, again, 2 hours, 50 marks, two tasks. Task one, section A, is the comprehension use of language. And so that is split into two questions. Question one is the comprehension task. Uh, and the entirety of section A, the comprehension task, will be based on text A, which will be given separately as an insert, which is about approximately 900 words long. And types of questions you will be asked are either explicit or implicit meaning questions. So some questions you will have the answers given directly in the text, and some of them you will need to figure out based on clues in the text. But these are the more standard type of comprehension questions. Again, right, we will learn how to tackle these still. Question two is use of language. This is where the writer's effect comes in. So, right, how writers achieve effects and influence readers, right? And so, question one is worth 16 marks, question two is worth 9 marks. That brings us to a total of 25. And because question two is part of the comprehension, it will also be based on text A in the insert. Section B, summary and short response. This will be based on a separate text, text B in the insert, and right, it will be a sort of informative slash narrative, right? So it will be a shorter text. One very important thing to highlight over here, this, right, 150 to 180 words. This was what Cambridge originally published, but it has now been updated. In fact, from the very beginning, they published an update. The summary is to be of no more than 150 words. No more than 150 words. That is important. Okay, so you max out at 150. You do not go beyond. If you go beyond 150, there is no negative marking, but your summary will not be checked beyond 150 words. So keep that in mind, right? Now, the summary task is also in two parts. Part 3A is writing the summary. So what you need to do, right? These are the objectives, and what you need to do, you'll be given a theme. You need to find points according to that theme. You need to rephrase those points in your own words, and you need to write it down as a paragraph in continuous writing. Continuous writing means not in bullet points or flow charts or anything else, as a paragraph, right? That is worth 20 marks. Then question 3B is a short response where you'll be given a scenario, sort of a role play scenario, where you'll be asked to be the character perhaps in the text, or someone who is interacting with the character, or someone who has been asked for an opinion based on the information given in text B. And then you need to present an opinion and then support your opinion with evidence from the text. Again, right, so details of how any of these questions are attempted when we get to those questions, right? So we'll go into detail. This is just an overview of the syllabus. Paper 2, right, the writing paper, again, two tasks. Task A is called directed writing. The reason it's called directed writing is because you are given directions on how to do it and what to do, right? Certain instructions that you have to follow, and that is why it is called directed writing. So over here, you'll be given one or two texts. So far Cambridge has been giving two short texts totaling to 400 or 450 words in length. They are given as part of the paper, so there's no insert in paper 2. And based on the information from the text, you will need to develop a speech, email, report, letter, or article. So one of these five, you will not have an option, right? Uh, so you need to prepare for all of them. And the email and the letter further split into formal and informal. So that makes it seven technically. Uh, Discursive, argumentative, or persuasive. So it's not straightforward that you take the points and you copy paste it. No, there's a bit of processing to do with that. And so again, we'll discuss how to do it. These are all the objectives. You can see all five of the writing objectives will be tested and only two of the reading, but the reading objectives are also tested here. Right, as you can see, select and use information for specific purposes. So getting the correct point out of the text is important. Section B, the composition. You will be given four topics to write on. Two of those would be narrative, two would be descriptive, and you are to choose one and write on only one of those four. Right? Oh, by the way, going back, the directed writing is word 25 marks, and the word limit is 250 to 350 words. The composition also word 25 marks. The word limit is 350 to 450 words. So they've actually brought down the word limit by 50 marks. I believe it used to be 350 to 500, if I'm not mistaken, in the earlier paper. Right? And so that is an overview of the syllabus. These are some command words that you need to be familiar with. Uh, right? And so if you come across any one of these in a question, then you need to know what it is exactly that the question is expecting you to do. So if the question is saying consider something, it means review and respond to given information. If the question is saying describe something, then it means state the points of a topic or give characteristics and main features. Just a minute. Okay. If there is an evaluate in the question, that means judge or calculate the quality, importance, or amount or value of something. And this is right what you will get in your directed writing task. Explain, so set out purpose or reason. So give a reason for something that's happening, or make a relationship between things, right? Make that relationship clear, or say why or how and support with relevant. So this is something that you will come across in the comprehension. Give, so just produce an answer. Identify, the name, select or recognize. Summarize, select and present the main points without detail, right? So that's basically a summary question without detail. And yeah, that's all the important stuff from the syllabus. Now, right, the syllabus is short. As you can see, there is just outlining the task. There is no syllabus content, so to speak. Right? There are no chapters to cover. And normally, students have this misconception that English is super easy and we can do it whenever we want. We don't need to pay attention to it because there is no content to the syllabus. There are no chapters to learn and no concepts to wrap your head around. And while that is, it sounds good, but that's not true. English language is a skill based subject, which actually makes it more challenging because all of this reading and writing that we're doing in these two papers is actually testing your skills of reading and writing, how well you can read something and get information out of that text as required, and how well you can write something according to what is expected of you from the question. And so your reading and writing skills need to be of a certain level, of a certain caliber, to be able to effectively respond to the questions. And that means everything they've mentioned uh, and more. So let's take a look at the question papers briefly, and then also let's go over the syllabus, sorry, the marking scheme. Any questions so far? I'm guessing not. Okay. So this is the specimen paper for 2024. As you can see right now, familiarize yourself with what the question paper looks like. You've got space for your name, center number that will be given to you, well, you, right, whichever school you are uh, going to. If you're a private candidate, then it will be given to you when you get your statement of entry, when you register for your examinations. Your candidate number again will be provided to you later. Read the information always. Right now, this is specimen paper, so the information is slightly different, but read that. Always read the instructions and please follow the instructions. Right, it says a total of 50 marks. It says that there are 8 pages in the document. When you have an actual examination, right, when you get the paper, when they ask you to start, first of all, right, go through the whole thing, see if there are 8 printed pages, right? So it says over here the last page is page number 8. Okay, I've got all the pages. It's not expected that there will be a problem with the pages and the print, but still, right, it's always good to be sure. If you're halfway through and there does happen to be a technical error, and that would make it problematic. Okay. Section E, right? That is the comprehension. It says over here, read text A nameless. Nameless is the title given to the text. In the insert and answer questions 1 and 2, right? And so here is the insert. This will be given to you separately. You can see it mentions insert over here. And this is text A. Right? It is named nameless for a particular reason. I'm not going to ask you to read through it at the moment. Right? This is the text. And so, right, these are the questions again, right? When we come to answering these, I will guide you as to how they need to be attempted. But right, all of these questions of different types, from question 1 totaling 16, then moving to question 2, which is the writer's effect questions. You can see they're mostly 1 mark, 2 mark. Right, the last one is 3 marks, and that is a total of 9, and that brings us to 25. Then is question 3a, section B, which is the summary. So that is from text B. So we go text B over here, right? And you can see right now the title obviously is just to tell you, it's just there. The title itself is not as important, but still, okay. There's an introductory line given over here. Do read the introductory line. You will not be asked a question based on the introductory line, but whatever introduction is given, do read it. So you've got text B over there, and then you've got a question. Now you can see it gives you a certain theme. Summarize what would appeal to guests, what would appeal guests to most to guests, right? So that is a theme. And so the task is not to summarize the entire text. The task is to find points relevant to the given theme, right? Use your own words. You have to rephrase it, and then write it out in continuous writing, which means as a paragraph basically. And you can see over here, right, they've given the should be no more than 150 words, right? And the marking is 10 marks available for content, 10 marks available for quality of writing. So we'll take a look at the marking scheme, right, just in a bit. This is question 3b, the short response. And so again, they've given you a scenario over here, a sort of role play, and they ask you a question, and then what is your opinion, why? So your opinion should be based on the information in the text. It is not something that you just think of and then support it with reasoning and evidence from the text. And that is the end of the paper, right? Now let's take a look at the mark scheme. Some generic marking principles. It's good to go over this. Uh, Even though you're students, this would give you an idea of how Cambridge approaches marking. right? So marks are awarded, generic marking principle one is marks are awarded according to the specific content of the mark scheme or the generic level descriptions, right? The specific skills defined in the mark scheme, the standard of response required by a candidate. Okay. Generic marking principle two, always given in whole marks. So no one's going to give you 0.25 or zero point 0.5 or 0.75 or I don't know, like 7 out of 8, a fraction of some sort. That's not going to happen. You either get a mark or you don't get a mark. It's as simple as that. Generic marking principle three, marks are always awarded positively. That basically means there is no negative marking. So you don't lose marks out of the total for making mistakes. You just don't gain them. So if you made a mistake, that means you're not going to get a mark that you could have. Marks will not be deducted out of the total for any errors or omissions or anything that you've made. Generic marking principle 4, rules must be applied consistently. This is basically for the examiner, right? Marks should be awarded using the full range again for the examiner. Again, all of this for the examiner, but knowing this helps you as a student as well. And marking principle 6, they are, marks are awarded based solely on the requirements as defined in the mark scheme. So there you go, right? If it's in the mark scheme, you get a mark. If it's not in the mark scheme, the actual exam, right? The actual examiner does have a bit more, elbow space in terms of, uh, grading the responses, but that's not something that's given in the mark scheme. So when we're practicing, we will base our responses and whether something is correct or not solely on what the mark scheme says, right? Or if your teacher, allows it, possibly. Now, right? Uh, Not going into the particulars of a response, right? Just how to, use a mark scheme. So let's see, right? If they right, as you can see, the rule for Cambridge, if the question is worth 1 mark, then they require you to give one valid point. If it's worth 2 marks, two valid points. Generally, that is the approach. And so whatever the weightage for a question is, that is how many valid points they expect. Okay. So right, in certain cases, there may be more than one points that would be accepted and you only expected to give, for example, two, and the number, right? Like, for example, this question, it's worth 3 marks, but you've got more than, uh, right? You have 1 mark for a feeling and three possible details, from which you only are required to give two, as it says, any two from these three. In some cases, right, do not credit cylinder enormous. So the examiners are given guidelines. If a student responds with certain words or certain phrases, then that would not be credited. So, right, if it's not so much here, but if there is something given in bold or if it's underlined, that means that is a word that is expected in the answer. And if it's not English, if it's some other subject, you see that in the mark scheme, know that that is something that is expected of you in the answer, if that's a keyword. So if you're not putting that in, regardless of however much detail you've given, right, you're not getting the mark if that keyword isn't there, right? Again, you can see over here saying do not credit so and so and so, right? So if the answer includes something like that, you're not getting a mark. Okay, carrying on. Question 2, again, the writer's meaning and effect. So, right, this is not as important at the moment, right? The summary. Now, here, this is right, the rubric is what I want to bring your attention towards. So, 3 is the summary. These are points that are expected to be included. How do you get your 20 marks? Right, there are 10 marks available for content, 10 marks for the quality of your writing. So the content is the reading, right? This table over here, the reading table. right? And so how do you get 10 marks for your content? And so let's look at the highest level, right, where you can get anywhere between 9 to 10 marks. A wide range of relevant ideas are skillfully selected and used, right? So you've selected the proper ones, and it's not the same idea being repeated. You have 10 different ideas, right? That's the maximum you can get because it's for 10 marks, and I just told you 1 mark per valid point. And so 10 marks for content means you need 10 points. And as you go down, right, you get lesser marks. For example, level 3, there's a range of relevant ideas. Relevant ideas selected may include excess material, so included details, again, something we'll go into when we are actually doing the summary. And basically, in this case, you'd get 5 to 6 marks if you have only 5 or 6 content points. Again, not including details, because if you have written details, you won't get any credit for those. Writing. Okay, so how do you get marks for writing in the summary? So, look at the highest level, which would get you between 9 to 10 marks. A relevant response for the summary that is expressed clearly, fluently, and mostly with concision. Concision meaning it's concise, short, which is the whole point of a summary, right? It's fluent, so there's flow. It doesn't feel like it's broken, points just joined together as a paragraph. It's clear, right? So it's well written. And so the response is well organized. The response is the candidate's own words and or structures where appropriate, with a range of vocabulary which clarifies meaning. Right now, when they say where appropriate, they basically mean, at least like around 80% of the text, at least. Right now, that's not a figure that you would find in any guide. It's I just say that from experience. There are certain words or phrases that you may not be able to rephrase, and there is a certain leeway that the examiner, because they aren't expecting you to be like rephrase the text or the points 100%, but the maximum possible. So let's say 80%, 75 to 80% minimum, right? And the maximum as much as you can. Okay. And then we go down, right? So, for example, level 3, a relevant response that is generally expressed clearly. So, it's just overall, it's okay. There is some evidence of organization, right? Some evidence, so it's not very well done, but you can make sense of it. The response is mainly the candidate's own words, so most of it, but it's not as much as the examiner would like or expect. And words and structures where appropriate. Okay, so that's that. And yeah, now for question 3b, which is the short response, again they have this rubric which the highest level is level 3, where you can get full marks 4 to 5, right? And the response is consistent and a relevant perspective is offered. Relevant perspective basically means that the opinion that you've expressed aligns with the opinion that the text is proposing. Ideas are developed and supported, right? So supported means you've given evidence from the text. Developed means you've given explanation to that point. Again, right? So when we get to it, this will become clearer. But this is something I wanted to share. And then perhaps the last thing for today is going over paper 2. So any questions as far as paper 1 and the mark scheme for paper 1 is concerned? Okay. Now here's paper 2. Again, this is specimen paper, right? Read the instructions, XYZ. Now you can see over here for paper 2, there is no space for your name and candidate number and center number, and that's because you will not be answering on the paper. You'll be given a separate answer sheet, and that's where you will find, the space for giving in your details. Section A is directed writing. As you can see over here, they're given two texts, right, on a certain topic. Now, in like generally whatever the topic is, in this case it is traveling abroad, exploring and traveling the world. And so one of the texts will be in favor of the topic, the other text will be against the topic. Which one is which? You read and find out, obviously. Then you come to the question. This one's a magazine article. So as I told you, you do not have an option, right? They will tell you do this, and that's what you have to do, right? And as directed writing, so they give you certain directions on how to do it. So this one is a magazine article, etc., etc. Evaluate the ideas and opinions, right? So as I mentioned, that's something you have to do. Again, we're not doing it at the moment. Give your views based on this. Okay, fine. Base your article on both texts. So you can see that's given in bold. So they expect points from both texts. Be careful to use your own words. Again, rephrasing is important. Begin your article with a suitable headline. So that is an instruction, right? So that's the writer writing part. Begin your article with a suitable headline. So they expect you to give a headline. Sometimes they give you the headline, start it this way. If they've mentioned something in specific, you do exactly what they're telling you to do, right? If they've given you a general guideline, start with a suitable headline, sure. But then they do expect to see a headline, not something that, specific headline. It's up to you, but a headline, whatever it is. 250 to 350 words. Now, this is the point of interest. 10 marks for content, 15 marks for quality of writing. So let's take a look at that in the marks scheme. Again, generic marking principles, these are the same. In fact, these are the same for any subject. You open the mark scheme for any subject, you will find generic marking principles. They're the same throughout because they're generic, means they're general, applied to all papers of Cambridge, even in your A level, right? So whether it's IGCSE, whether it's your O level, whether it's your A level, right? These are generic marking principles. In some papers, you might find specific marking principles such as science papers. So they have science specific marking principles, and so those would be different. Now, how are you given marks for this? Right? Reading, 10 marks for content. So again, let's look at the highest level, right, where you can get 9 to 10 marks. And what would be expected of a response of this level? It selects a wide range of relevant facts, ideas, and opinions from the texts, right? So different ideas, not just one idea being repeated. In fact, if an idea is repeated, you generally won't include it because you've already done it once. So doing it twice is not going to, add value to your text. The second, analyze, evaluate, and develop. So again, this analyze, evaluate, and develop thing is something that gets students scared, and it's nothing to be scared of. It's a skill that needs to be developed, and we will work on it. So, analyzes, evaluates, and develops chosen content in a way that clearly fulfills all the elements of the task. So, task fulfillment, right, is a criteria. Are you doing what you were expected by the question? And if you go down, like let's take a look at level 3 again, right? So, identify sufficient relevance. So, there, okay, fine, you got something, right? Not everything, and then some development of ideas in a reasonably focused. So you tried to do something, you did, get, some analysis done, not as much as would be liked, but still, right? So it's a mediocre response. 15 marks for the quality of writing. Now, what are they expecting out of the quality? Right? Now, this is where, as I said, there's no content, no chapters. So, right, in the earlier classes, lower classes, there's separate questions for grammar, there's separate questions for punctuation and tenses, and making sentences in a certain way, etc., etc. It's not like that anymore, right? So all of those things are now tested in the way you write, the words you use. So level 5, 13 to 15 marks. What are they expecting for this highest level? Content is complex. Complex meaning it is not written in a straightforward childish manner, right? It is written in a manner where you know what you're doing. You've weaved together all the information in a proper piece of writing. How do I clarify that further? Right? It's not just point, 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 point written as a paragraph. you've gone for, against, analysis, evaluation mixed in, right? But in a coherent way that makes sense with proper organization, right? So content is complex, well developed, and effective. So it does its job, right? In this case, it's a magazine article, so it's written the way that a magazine article is expected to be written, and right, you've included the points, you developed them properly. Well organized structure that assimilates ideas from the text. Again, organization is important. Uses a range of well constructed sentences accurately, right? Well constructed sentences accurately, right? So you can have a well constructed sentence, but you're using it in the wrong place or in the wrong context. So that's not accurate. Okay. So the way you're phrasing your sentence in the particular part of the text that you're doing it, both of those matter. Including complex sentences, right? So not just simple sentences, not just compound sentences, including complex sentences as well. And sentence structure is something that I will cover in class. Precise and effective use of a wide range of vocabulary. Now this is right, precise and effective. So you're using the right word and you're using it in the right place, and it is giving a good intended effect, right? If I use a big word such as, I don't know, uh, for example, let's take the word petrichor, right? Now, not something that we'd use in dictionary writing, perhaps more of a narrative or descriptive, but petrichor, right? Petrichor, petrichor. And so that's the term used for that sandy smell that you get when it's about to rain or when it's raining. Now, if I am using that word, right? First of all, am I using it in the correct place? And the way I'm using it, is it giving the intended meaning, right? And the spelling, obviously. So if I'm using petrichor for, maybe the smell that's coming from, I don't know, uh, right, wet clothes out of the laundry, that's not accurate because that's not what petrichor is. Right? So just because like, oh, it's coming from the rain, so something that's wet, so I'll use it for laundry. No, it's not the same thing. Okay, consistently. Oh, did we lose someone in between? Okay. So consistently appropriate tone and register for audience and purpose. Again, what type of writing it is, it needs to, what type of task it is, your writing needs to be in tune with the task. Highly accurate use of complex spelling, accurate use of complex spelling, punctuation, grammar. Again, right? So you're using complex words, they have complex spelling, you're putting it in. Are you doing it correctly? Are you putting it in the right place? Are you using that punctuation in the right place? I hope you're not putting commas where there's supposed to be full stops, for example, right? Because that is not, you're using punctuation, but you are not using them accurately, right? And grammar. So I think I'm getting a notification. Is there a question? No, no, it's just Google Meet. Okay. Right, and so you can go down the levels and you can see, how much it's worth. In the other levels, obviously, the quality of the writing would be lower, and so you get lesser marks. And then finally, we come to right section B, which is composition, which basically gives you a list of two descriptive and two narrative tasks. Topics, pick any one and write it out. And so there are 10 marks available for content and structure, 15 marks for style and accuracy of writing. So how do we get those marks? Again, the marking rubric is what we want to look at today to get an idea of how we can score those marks, what Cambridge is expecting of us. So 10 marks for content and structure. What can we do to get at level 5? What is expected? Consistently effective response to the task. Again, depending on whether it's narrative or descriptive, a wide range of descriptive or narrative features used to create a consistently effective response. For that, we will need to go into details of what are the features of a narrative or what are the features of a descriptive piece of writing. Right? So you need to know, and so you need to practice and incorporate those in your writing. Structure is clear, well balanced, and carefully organized for deliberate effect. Right? Organization is important. You don't just randomly put down details thinking it will make a story or it will make a description work. Right? It is well balanced. It is clear. Okay, it's not convoluted, it's not confusing, it is well balanced. So well balanced meaning you got highs and lows in the narrative, the level of detail you're going to in a descriptive piece of writing, right? It's not like too much detail focused on a single point because the topic is, broad, and so you need to satisfy the requirements of the topic. And then so you go down level 3, sometimes effective response, some use of narrative or descriptive features, structure is reasonably clear, some organization, some choices made for deliberate effect, right? So you go down further, right, and the quality obviously keeps decreasing down the levels. And then the 15 marks for style and accuracy. So what are they expecting? Again, something that looks familiar from the directed writing task. Use, right, level 5, use a wide range of well-constructed sentences accurately, including complex sentences, something we've gone over. Precise and effective use of wide range of vocabulary, again discussed. Highly accurate use of complex spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Right, so again, punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, spelling, all of that is considered, right? So, but the only difference is now it is not taken up as separate questions. They give you a writing task and then they judge all of those qualities, all of that, you know, foundational material in what you have produced in paper two, right? So it's like, doing all of that together, because it's easy to do individual exercises for grammar. You get an exercise for changing tenses, or you get an exercise where you're given certain words and you're expected to make sentences out of those words. That's easy. Are you able to use those words in a piece of writing where it makes sense? That is the challenge. Are you able to use the tenses properly in a piece of writing? That is the challenge. Okay, and level 3, right, uses more sentence structures accurately, sometimes attempting complex ones with success, right? So they are, daring, perhaps, obviously every student has their own level, right, despite however much effort they put in. And honestly, it is the effort that is important. As long as you put in the effort, the results follow, and it's good. That doesn't mean you slack off, right? Again, the requirement is that you put in the required effort, you give it 100%, right? And then, if you have given 100%, then whatever grade you get is a good grade, right? So perhaps for this, someone who's getting a level 3, they tried their best and they were daring, and they attempted complex sentences and they did it well, so it's a success for them, right? But right, we want to try and get up to level 5. Again, try to the best of our ability. Uses a straightforward range of appropriate vocabulary. So straightforward, right? The regular basic kind of vocabulary, right? Not, simple as in level 2, right? Simple vocabulary, right? Are straightforward range. So, to the more general, not the very simple, but right, the more general vocabulary. And uses a straightforward range of spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Right? So keeping it straightforward, keeping it simple, not going into, not trying to use multiple commas in a sentence, not trying to use perhaps hyphens or colons or something like that, or dialogues and inverted commas, right? Quotation marks, any of those. And that brings us to the end, right? So this was an overview of the syllabus, the papers, what they look like, and the mark scheme and the marking criteria, the rubrics, right? And again, right, when you are preparing in any subject, I recommend this highly for any subject that you're doing. Read the syllabus, read the requirements. The syllabi are different depending on the subject. So go through the syllabus in detail, right? See the structure of the questions in the papers that you have to attempt for each syllabus, and go over the mark scheme if they have details as to how, maybe if they've got rubrics for some, maybe not so for others. But familiarize, sorry, yourself with the expectations of the paper at the syllabus, because at the end of the day it is an examination. An examination has certain uh, right rules and regulations to follow and certain standards. So it is right, even English language, even though it's called English language, right, the paper is not testing the entirety of your language but only a very specific set of skills, right? So there's more than one type of comprehension question that can be made, but Cambridge is asking you for certain types of questions. There's more than one way a summary can be written, right? There's more than one way a dieted writing task. In fact, Cambridge itself, right, pre 2024, the dieted writing task was very different. Now they've changed it, so that itself is evidence that there's more than one way this can be done, but they're asking you now to do it a specific way. So it is a test of skill within the boundaries of the syllabus requirement. Right? So again, it's not testing the entirety of your language proficiency. That is not what this examination is. Keep that in mind. And because it is an examination, you need to make a show of your skills, especially in paper two, right? The writing one. The reading one, because right, your skills will show up as you answer the questions. In the writing paper, they said right, grammar and vocabulary, punctuation. So you need to show off, right, whatever your skills are. Because again, it's an examination, so what you want are the marks, what you want is the grade. That is important, right? And to get that, you have to do what you have to do. So that's all for today. Tomorrow we will get into attempting paper one. Our initial progress will be a bit slow because we will be, breaking down the requirements and how to and what not, what to do and what not to. So the do's and don'ts, the tips and tricks as we move along. And once we have covered all the, we've gone through the paper once, one round of papers, maybe two, and then we just switch gears a bit. So any questions for anything we've done so far today? Right, Ammar is all clear on that. What about you, Mirza Bakir? All good? Okay, so right, so we'll meet again tomorrow, inshallah, right? And we'll get into solving papers. And of course, if there's anything that you want to ask in the meantime, you can put in a message. Right. So I'll see you in next class. Allah Hafiz.